Welcome to the Canadian Expat, where we continue on our journey speaking with Canadians that are living abroad so that we might gain a bit of inspiration, obtain some advice, and perhaps hear a few cautionary tales. Today, we go to Tokyo. When we start talking about Japan, Japanese cuisine, and specifically the beverage market here, one's thoughts invariably begin to lean towards sake or beer, but not necessarily wine. At the same time, when the topic of Canadian wine enters the discussion, most Canadians understand that the bulk of Canadian wine producers do not produce enough wine to export much volume at all. So you put those two thoughts together, and you could be excused for believing that it would be impossible to find any Canadian wine at all in Japan, let alone a standalone shop dedicated to selling only Canadian wine. Something that I just learned is that Japan is the 5th largest importer of wine in the world. So take that and talk to our next guest, who in 2011, Jamie Paquin, filled with passion to share both his newly found love of Canadian wine and his love of Japan, decided to open such a shop, Heavenly Vines, a shop dedicated solely to introducing Canadian wines to the sophisticated Japanese consumer. Jamie, welcome to the Canadian Expat.
Thanks for having me.
You exemplify our mantra that Canadians living abroad are a huge resource that, once engaged and provided with the right tools, have the ability to significantly impact the Canadian economy, both culturally and economically. And thank you for what you do.
Well, thanks. It's fun to have something that makes me proud as a Canadian to share here in Japan.
I'd like to hear about what it physically takes to import wine to Japan. Is it difficult?
I think any sort of importing is tedious, lots of documents and irritants along the way with differences in what's approved in each country. And but it's the least favorite part of what we do, but it's manageable. And if you follow procedures correctly, you should be okay. It's a learning process at first, though.
Right, I can imagine. Now, I understand that you first entered into Japan on something completely different. You were pursuing your PhD in sociology, correct?
Yeah, so I came here while doing that. I had a research scholarship from the Japanese government, thanks to them, and got here and really liked it. And while I was working away at that degree, just living in Japan, and especially in Tokyo, you just get immersed in a truly sophisticated wine and food culture, where prior to any sort of hipster movement to reinvigorate that kind of care, Japanese have always just really been attentive to where things come from, quality. So that inspired me to enjoy wine more. And then when I would visit Canada, I dug a lot deeper, going beyond the LCBO in Ontario to see what was going on. And once you start looking at some of the best wines in Canada, we constantly come back with double gold, best in show around the world. And so I really thought that our wines could find a place here in this market.
So you found a product and you believe you had a market. Bringing that together and creating a shop such as yourself must have been a little bit of a tough slog.
My wife's Japanese and she's very capable. And once I started talking about this by chance, she saw an ad by consultants to help people into the food and wine industries. So we actually got off the ground pretty quickly. We paid 10 or 15,000 Canadian for their assistance, which included all the licenses that we needed, the import license. In Japan, it's a singular market, but the different types of business require different licenses. So that involved an import license, a wholesale license, a retail license, an online retail license. the bigger hurdle was you had to prove some sort of track record in this industry. So we had to get creative, creating a historical resume for me and things like that. But once it was all done, it would actually, I guess, 3 months or so, we were ready to go officially. And the other part of that was finding the producers that wanted to work with us here.
Now, resources, you've just mentioned consultants, and that can be an extremely valuable resource. What about those maybe that are in existence in Japan, like the Canadian Chamber of Commerce? Did you make use of that community?
I'm a member. We're a small business member of the chamber now. I think we do. We're happy to be part of that. Last year, our wines were feature wines at the gala and this sort of thing. So we're always happy to do that sort of thing.
So, on that note, what about advice for another Canadian that might be living, whether it be in Japan or Thailand or the UK or France or wherever they might be? They've come across a product, a Canadian product that they really would love to bring to their market, and they believe they have a market. What would be, I'm going to put you on a spot here, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for those people, assuming that they know nothing about the import business?
Yeah, I think really assess whether it can fill a need in that market or if it's just replicating something that already exists. If it purely replicates an existing product, then you face the challenge of brand or country strength in relation to what you're bringing in. The emotive elements of any product are such a huge aspect of what will trigger customers to want it. Make sure, like if I speak about Japan's quality standards across the board are so high that you really have to make sure everything's impeccable. That includes the packaging, the quality of the product on the inside, and that it to some degree meets the tastes of the local people. I mean, that being said, there's a diverse range of tastes and palates. But then I think you have to tell a story and you have to be an ambassador for a more interesting story of Canada. We spend a lot of time trying to deepen people's relationship to Canada, going beyond what they already understand the country to be about, and and the storytelling, the authenticity of it. When you're trying to compete against larger entities that have huge resources or branding power, you have to ingratiate yourself with stories that tie people to what you're offering them emotionally. I don't know if that's one. 2 would be try to really gain access to those key influencers of substance who will matter. And I don't mean depends on the product, but for us, we're trying to reach serious, passionate wine people who will care about the subtleties of our wine, the viniculture, and the viticulture. So we're not interested in just popular celebrities or blogists. We want to reach the key people in the wine industry. The Japan Sommelier Association, for example, has 11,000 members. The vice president also is a fan of our wines, and he also has a Michelin star restaurant here in Tokyo. Recently, we just had lunch with Japan's Master of Wine and one of his colleagues who together they do the Japan Airlines wine program. These types of people, in relation to wine, they can do wonders for us because with their stamp of approval, everyone else will psychologically shift towards accepting that we belong in the serious discussion of great wines of the world. And I think just persistence. If you start asking your friends and people you meet about your product before you do it, everyone will tell you they're buy it. It's necessarily true. So I think you could be easily deflated by going through the process of finally bringing a product to market, and don't expect it to happen overnight. It's just remember everyone else is doing the same thing you are, and everyone else is making their moves, and it's likely a crowded market, and you only gain traction by offering something really excellent over time and supporting that. So I think that's about 3 ideas.
So, how successful have you been, by the way? Just out of curiosity, it's been really good?
Well, it depends how you measure that. Like doing this business is about creating a market, not meeting an existing demand. So, when you leave Canada, you quickly realize Canada's the depth of people's knowledge of Canada is really superficial, and they equate it with an Arctic country, along the lines of Scandinavia, right? Ice and snow and all that. In Japan, in particular, it's Rocky Mountains, maple syrup, Anna Green Gables, Northern Lights, and so the words Canadian wine don't even go together here. Nobody's, in front of Google today, Googling those terms, especially 8 years ago. So for me, it was about having a passion for the excellence of Canadian wine and wanting to share it, and then trying to match that with an existing sophisticated wine market, but one that completely lacks any quality Canadian wine. So from that point of view, I'm pretty happy with what we're achieving, and I think it's wine is kind of a tipping point phenomenon. I think where you reach a certain level where there's enough of the key wine influencers who have accepted you at the table and start to pronounce that your wines are worthy of being on wine lists and that sort of thing. And I think we're knocking at that door right now. We've made some really good connections with some of the super elite of the Japanese wine world who have taken a real strong interest in a lot of our wines. So, yeah, but it's 8 years. I think most people want a quick return on investment and may have packed it in a lot earlier. But I started with this assumption that it would take a long time. And so we've always done things keeping our operating expenses low and worked within our means to grow at a pace that didn't put us in a situation where we had to just pack it all in because we were over leveraged. So.
And that's one point that I hoping to demonstrate as well is that you've been open for 8 years, so that says a great deal in itself. The fact that you've been able to last that long, you're still going on. So there has to be some level of financial success, or you just wouldn't last this long.
Yeah. I mean, what would be interesting is if we could double our revenue. That would be really nice. We'd still be a small business, but that would make the difference between all of our cost of operation and a real good margin. So, and it wouldn't take much to do that. We're in a country of 124 million people, and they say there's 150,000 restaurants in Tokyo, and double or triple the number of items we sell every day would be a game changer. So, I think if we do reach that point where our wine is really required for any serious wine list, it'll be exponential suddenly. So I'm betting on that. But we've never had to. We always run in the black, and I think we've done it in a way that is comfortable for a long-term project like this.
Thank you so much. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. You've got a business to run. Again, thank you so much for everything you do.
Yeah, thanks for the support. One of the things I think Canadians in general should do is shift away from that hidden psychological anxiety about the quality of Canadian products and truly strive to excellence, but also have confidence that we do produce things of excellence and share them with the world. I just as soon drink second cup coffee here in Tokyo, but it's full of Starbucks, because I think it's a mentality difference between Canadians and Americans. And if we've got something to offer the world, we should share it and make great stuff that are worthwhile sharing. So,
thanks so much.
Thanks again. Yeah.
And thank you for watching the video. If you've enjoyed it, I would encourage you to hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you're interested in participating in one of these conversations, please write in the comments that you'd like to do that. We'd love to hear your story. Until next time.